I'm Craig Beaumont Flynn. Welcome to Beyond the Design, a show that gives you a peek behind the curtain of the design industry and shares the stories of those that are the driving force behind it. Well, welcome to Beyond the Design, and today we have with Joseph Troughton with David Collins Studio out of London. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Craig. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we just go ahead and start off and have you share the journey that led you to join David Collins Studio as an intern and eventually rise to the position of associate designer?
Well, actually, I guess today is less about me personally. I think that's one thing when you work in a studio like David Collins Studio, it's
right.
You realize that you're part of a collective. So I think the story will be more about the studio's journey and obviously my personal story will be woven into that. But yeah, if I start on the studio, because that chronologically precedes me, it's rewind all the way back to 1985 when David Collins himself and Ian Watson, who is now our CEO, were at a social event, and they met by chance, which I think is just a crazy concept to think that our studio and what we are now today are all based on this one event, that it's sparked by the two of them meeting, wearing the same jacket, and that's what got them started. It's without that jacket,
place and time.
Exactly. You just think, without that jacket, what would we be today? Would we be the same company? And so, yeah, there's a lot to sort of speak of for this jacket, I think. And when I've heard stories about it as well, it's in my mind, it's like the one that Will Smith wears in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the way that it's been described to me. So I think we should try and find a vintage copy of it somewhere on. I'm sure it's out there online. But yeah, that's how it started. Chance encounter is my understanding, and from there, the two of them teamed up, and they're a great team. Obviously, David, this creative genius, Ian, who's got this amazing business mind, yet is also incredibly creative himself. Teamed up, and their first project of note was in that year, 1985, and they designed a restaurant called La Tante Claire for 3 Michelin-starred chef Pierre Kaufman, and that was it. It was like that was the thing that got the ball rolling, and what an incredible project. And so from there, his protege, so Chef Kaufman's protege, was somebody called Pierre White, who I think I'm speaking these references in Britain. He's huge, and was actually the first British chef to get 3 Michelin stars. So, and this is at a time when, of course, London, England, the British Isles had no kind of reputation for food, and all of a sudden you've got the likes of Pierre White, this meteoric rise, and we were there working with Pierre Kaufman, and then Marco came to us and asked us to help design his restaurants when he set up on his own. And it started organically like that, and it kept going. And I mean, even if you look at his Pierre White's proteges and sous chefs who worked with him, I mean, for example, Gordon Ramsay was the next one. And again, we were super lucky to work with him, and it was just an amazing journey. And this is all happening before I was even born.
Now you make me feel old.
I know. Well, I feel old as well. I mean, I'm probably going to have Ian, my CEO, like, thanks for that.
Well, you mentioned a time when celebrity chefs weren't even part of the conversation. I think that's right, when the rise of the culinary arts to be focused as something that's an entity, and people really started looking at the chefs as celebrities and artists in themselves.
Exactly. Their personalities coming through, and especially Pierre White. I'm one of those people who really took TV by storm. Same as Gordon Ramsay, and it's people got to know their personalities, and I think that's a point where we were really starting to try and get their personalities across in terms of an interior. And it's a really interesting sort of story and how it all unfolds. But really, that was my knowledge of the studio growing up, was seeing this story and all of those projects. And yeah, meanwhile, I was a little kid playing with Lego, writing down in my little Filofax. Did you have Filofaxes when?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I had one when I was a kid that I wrote down that I want to be an architect, followed that for as long as I could, studied architecture at university, and then working in it, worked as an architectural assistant on a project where the interior designers were David Collins' studio. And everything I was doing was slow paced, long term, kind of boring, and there wasn't any design involved. And that was because I quickly realized, cities like London, a lot of buildings already exist, and the main creative sort of solutions were from interior designers. And I looked at what they were doing and I was like, I want to be part of that. And so that's when I came into the picture back in 2011, and never looked back since. But it's been amazing. And, there's so many stories before my time and after, but some of them are incredible. Like when I joined, the Blue Bar was the one that, it's like when I close my eyes and think of David Collins' studio, I think of like the likes of the Blue Bar, the apartment at the corner.
Right.
They're amazing projects that have stood the test of time. And, hearing their stories once you've come on board, and you kind of think, again, like chance encounters and things that have happened that have made them what they are today, that would have completely changed the history of our company and the work that we do. Like the Blue Bar, for example, was going to be pistachio in color. Doesn't quite have the same ring. And then
no.
And even that, I think that's where you got to see David's creative genius at that time, where he took that, what was a timber paneled room, really historic, listed, which means that you cannot really change any of the architecture at all. And he was brave enough to come in and say that actually London is full of rooms like this. We're really blessed to have that sort of history and heritage on display everywhere. And it's almost getting to the point where people take it for granted. And his vision was to paint it all blue and make people sit up and take notice of the beauty that is that paneling. And it was a brave planning officer that got on board with that story. And without that planning officer, the Blue Bar wouldn't be the Blue Bar. It would be the same timber paneled room that you see everywhere in London. And so, yeah, I love those little stories.
Takes insight and vision and just pure guts to flip it to its side and completely change it.
A lot of bravery.
All aspects.
Yeah. So
the studio is renowned for its meticulous attention to detail and its unique blend of aesthetics. Can you share how the studio's design philosophy has evolved since its inception, almost 40 years ago now?
It always stays the same. And well, I say that every project is unique, and every response that we have, every creative response is different. But we've got these core values, these guiding principles that are always the same. And it's very much find out what's unique about the client, and how can you translate their brand, their company, who they are, even as individuals, if it's private residential, into an architectural language that is personal to them, something that they can then own and that they can take around the world, especially when it comes to commercial design. So, hospitality, hotels, bars, restaurants, retail, all of these companies, they need their own language that people can see just a snapshot of that project and recognize it as them. So, and that's something that we really pride ourselves on, is taking the time to do that, to establish who they are and translating that into this interior design language. So it is always, that's the aim, that's the starting point. And we always kind of go on that journey. But of course, every single person, every single brand is unique. And so the output is always so different and meaningful. That's the key thing there, is that it's meaningful to them.
Right. Unfortunately, David passed away almost 11 years ago. How has the studio worked to honor his legacy while also forging a new path under the creative vision led by Simon and Ian? And given that, 40 years anniversary of being in business is coming up, is there anything planned to honor his beginning of this studio?
What a question. I mean, when I was listening to that, I was actually just flashing back to the day that we got the news, which was, as you can imagine, a really hard-hitting day. There was, even leading up to it. So David would go on holiday for a couple of weeks at a time at the drop of a hat, but it was the part of the nature of being at that level. You're kind of at people's beck and call, and then you very rarely get an opportunity to go away. So sometimes it'd be short notice. He'd be like, I've got a gap in my diary, I'm going to go.
Right.
But yeah, this time he was gone for, it felt like 2 weeks. And it got to the point where we were thinking, actually, where is David? And it was just a chance moment where we were speaking to the front of house and asking to book a taxi. That they fired up this is pre-Uber as well, fired up the website for the taxi, and we were looking at booking a cab, and we could see the history, and that we saw David's address, and that there were multiple taxis going to the local cancer ward. At which point there were three of us stood there, and it just dawned on us that it must mean that David's got cancer. And that kind of prepared, I would say prepared, it didn't actually, prepared us for what was to come. The next day, we were turned up to work, lovely, beautiful sunny day, which is a rarity in London. And by 10 o'clock, we all got called into the large conference room in our office, which is this incredible space. There's an old barn that's kind of been converted, and it's such an impressive space when you walk in. But the moment we walked in, you could see Ian. I remember that. Sorry, my voice is wobbling because
sorry.
I've never revisited this in its entirety. But yeah, I walked in with everyone, and you could see Ian stood across, and pain on his face was there. And moments like that, you kind of expecting him to talk, but he clearly couldn't. And so our PR and marketing director, David Kendall, was the one who was going to deliver the news. But in my mind, I was thinking, we figured this out. We know that he's got cancer, and you're probably going to say that he started his treatment. But no, within a few seconds, they were saying that David had died from a short battle of cancer. And it was, yeah, it hit so hard, but I'm doing it now. In that very moment, I remember, and I'm going to sound so evil and heartless, but I laughed because I was just in so much shock.
Right.
And it's only, I've beaten myself up about that for years, actually. That why do I laugh in that situation? But you're never emotionally equipped to deal with something like that in that moment. And yeah, that was
especially when it's so sudden and unexpected.
Yeah, really, really sudden. And from that moment onwards, you could bless them. The leadership team, so Ian, Simon, Lewis, Roz, David, they have been amazing. They, obviously having to deal with the grief of losing David, and then this pressure of this is your company now, and where's it going to go? They shielded us from a lot of that pain, and I've got a lot of respect for them all, even to this day, for everything that they've done and the way that they've guided us. I don't think that they could have done it any better. They did a lot of soul searching and thinking, who are we now as David Collins Studio without David Collins? And that was a really tricky question to answer. Who are we? And there was a definite shift to the studio, like David Collins Studio. Without David Collins in there, we are the studio. And that was the mentality that we've adopted since then. We've never forgotten the legacy. And even to this day, there are projects where I do it and I think, what would David think? What would he be saying to me? And it's, he was great with his design reviews, so witty, but always on the money every single time. And yeah, there are days where you think, I'd love his guidance to see what he would make of this. But ultimately, we've now got Simon, who is a creative genius in himself. And really, when I look back, I've always followed Simon since day one there. He's been the one who's kind of been the creative force that's inspired everything that I've done. And I guess it just took a moment for Simon to realize that himself, that he is the creative figurehead, and rightly so. He's amazing. But the point is that it's not just one person anymore that's got their name above the door. It's a whole studio that's supporting Simon. You've got, like, the names that I've mentioned previously, Lewis, who's the design director, incredible support, and in his own right, a brilliant designer. And that applies to everyone. So,
well, it helps when you have such a creative visionary and force that's guided you, and when they step away, their presence is always there no matter what. Yeah. Even though their physical being's not there, their thought process stays with you.
Yeah, mentally he's always there. And like I said, the question mark, what would he think? Would he be rolling in his grave at this design decision that I'm making?
Knocking you in the back of the head.
Yeah, there's amazing design, creative, better than what I'll ever be. So, it's...
So as I mentioned, 40 years anniversary is coming up. Is there anything planned or scheduled celebration-wise, and also
I hope so.
Tie into to David's presence?
Yeah, I hope so. So we always honor David at these moments, and I'm sure there'll be lots of events and things to watch this space over the next year. But I rewinding back to the last time that we did this 10 years ago, we hosted a party for DCS 30, and that was a great party actually. We were in Mayfair and rented a space called Phillips, which is in the heart of Berkeley Square, and the building, lovely building with these great big picture windows. So from the outside looking in, it's kind of, you can see everything, and inside you kind of feel like you're in that fishbowl, sort of nowhere to hide. Right. We were having a great time though, with all of our clients, really celebrating our work, celebrating David's legacy. And it's moments like that you hear the stories directly from those clients of their interactions with David, that you learn more. There's so much more that you learn. But even at that party, I remember there was a crazy moment where someone came up to me and they were like, "Oh, Matt Damon just tried to get into the party and then got turned away because there's not enough space. We've reached our capacity." And I was like, what? I would happily give up my space for him to come in. But yeah, he'd gone. So yeah, Matt, if you're listening, DCS 40 is coming up. We'll send you an invite.
There you go. Well, I hope I get one. I'll come to London. No problem. The studio's projects span across commercial, residential, and destination restaurants and such. How does the studio approach the challenge of maintaining a high standard of design across such varied types of projects?
Well, there's always this pressure that you want to deliver the best that you can all the time. And yeah, the great thing about the studio is that we've got that. It is just that you've got all of these different people from different disciplines, different backgrounds, all together in one space. And the way that we work together is brilliant. That feed off each other's energy, feed off each other's designs. And more often, you'll find that people who are completely detached from that design project are the ones that come in with a great suggestion. And yeah, there's plenty of stories like that where people have kind of just seen it and thought, actually, maybe take this approach. and you've never seen it, and it's those fresh eyes that are a great thing to have on projects.
Right.
And it's something that we like to bring to our projects. For example, our next one that's opening is the Queen Anne, which is an amazing cruise ship, which is actually, its maiden voyage is the 3rd of May, so coming up very soon. And
this is the first maritime project for the studio, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly that. It's the fresh eyes. We were brought on board for that reason. We worked in collaboration with a couple of other design studios. So it was headed by Adam Tahani, great designer, was the design guardian on that. And then there's Richmond International, Sabine de Margerie, and obviously ourselves. And we were the ones who didn't have that previous experience. And so again, it was, okay, when we're approaching this project, who do we turn to and where do we get those ideas from? And we quickly realized that that's a blessing when it comes to this, that you can take on these projects and look at them with a blank slate. You've got no kind of bias, no preconceived ideas. You see spaces for what they are, and you can respond to them in that way with this complete freedom. You know, you're liberated to do all of these different design ideas. And sure, there are times where you present something and there's someone who's very experienced in the field kind of laughing because they think that you've obviously not come across this problem yet. But, you know, there are those moments where they don't laugh and you just sit there sort of thinking, why haven't we done that before? And, you know, there's that fresh energy that is always needed in projects.
Well, test your skills and your thought process when it's out of the norm, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, that even Ian, our CEO, spending time with him, he's someone who tries to sort of step back from the design completely and allows the designers to do what we do. But he is so savvy when it comes to design. I think he should be much more involved. And yeah, just because we kind of have these titles within the studio doesn't mean that that's where our footprint, you know, extends to. We can, you know, I love those moments where people just walk by your screen and say, oh, that looks a bit like, you know, so they're not always great either. That looks like a clown's face, or it does actually. I need to change that. But no, they come out with golden suggestions as well, where they think, why didn't you try that? And yeah, that makes it work.
Now, collaboration is a key component in large-scale projects. I mean, especially something like Maritime and some restaurant destinations that you've actually created. How do you describe how the diverse team of designers, architects, and artists at the studio come together on a project?
So, yeah, the collaboration is key. And that's something that working in a large studio really teaches you, that the power of a team is so much stronger than any individual. And, you know, you read all of these things, but you experience it when you work in a studio like this. And again, even looking further afield outside of the studio, our best projects are when that collaboration is with all of the consultants, the client team. You know, everything has to work perfectly on projects for them to achieve what we want them to. And so, yeah, inside of the office, of course, we're always going through these, you know, the design process that I was talking about, finding out who these clients are, what their brands are, how we translate that. But then it's also making sure that we pass that on to the other people that we work with, and, you know, going into that level of detail with the lighting consultants who are make or break in any projects. Without them, you know, just give up. Lighting is that key. No, even down to all the M&E consultants, everyone has to be on board, and it's that collaboration that's key. And I love those meetings where you're all sat around a table. And I think the Queen Anne project, I remember cast my mind back to the beginning of that, the initial days where those different design studios all first met. You would think that there may be some kind of friction, that there's people turning up with their own agenda. There was none of that. It was excellent that you could just have all of these designers in one room with one clear vision, and it's to just do the best job that we can. And I think that people quickly buy into that's what design is about. It's about improving the world. It's improving the world that we all share. And so why would we not collaborate? We should all work together to make this the best that it can be. And the moment that people see that message and feel it, that's when you get really special results.
Now, you've worked on some very large-scale, internationally renowned hospitality projects at the studio. Walk us through the conceptualization, and execution process of a project of that size.
Okay. First and foremost, projects have to function, which is something I guess that people kind of skip over when they come to our work. It's people think that it's dominated by aesthetics and the way that things look, and that's not the primary sort of position that we have. We always focus on operations first, and I don't think that there's a better example out there than the Wolseley, which was designed in 2002, 2003. It's over 20 years old. But really, the key to its success is because we worked so hard on the operations, spent ages trying to get the kitchens in the right place, making sure that they have enough space, that the service is absolutely seamless. And from that point onwards, the design naturally followed. And of course, there are amazing design interventions in there, and the space is beautiful, but it's the way that it functions that's really key. And that's the same in so many projects. We've even sent people to work at, do days experiences with the clients that we work with to get that understanding and that knowledge. And it's not always the kind of the 5-star hotels or the high-end establishments that we've worked in our past with. Chains, like retail chains, and Pret a Manger, for example, which are in the States. I mean, if you've been to New York, Chicago, and LA, I think actually, they're dotted around. But understanding that the way that they operate, we literally sent people to go and work there to understand how it all works seamlessly, and then
that's fantastic
to design so that we don't get in the way of that. Because that would be the worst thing to do, is to create a design where actually you're hindering that seamless operation. Instead, you should be celebrating it. That's another key thing. Really, really celebrate the operations and just allowing them to go about their business as seamlessly as possible.
Now, the studio's work is internationally recognized with projects across the globe. How does working in different cultural contexts influence your design process and the final design outcomes?
We love it. That really every project that we work on internationally, always travel there first. There's never a time that we've done a project without going to see the site. And even if you've been to the country, go to the site, go to see what is local and finding out what all those nuances are. And they definitely drive the design. And I mean, I'm thinking of a time where Simon was in a car in Thailand. We were working on a project called Mahanakhon, which is, I believe, the tallest tower in Bangkok. A great, beautiful building where it's got all of these kind of pixels that have been eaten away as it goes up. And we were designing the apartments, show apartments in there, and some of the F&B space supported it. But Simon was in a car, and at the side of the road, he just saw someone weaving rattan. And this is maybe 10 plus years ago. And he stopped the car. He was like, stop this car. I want to go and see what that person's doing. And again, it was a bit like, as I was talking about the London architecture, you take it for granted. The client team that was with them were like, yeah, it's someone weaving rattan. Simon was like, this is incredible. This skill that's just at the side of the road should be celebrated and should form part of our design. And the client had a lot of confidence to go with us for that, because obviously, this is a material that you see people weaving it by the side of the road. It's not celebrated.
Right.
So then why would we take it and put it in our establishment that's meant to be like unachievable for other people and aspirational for everyone? And yeah, it took a lot of courage from them and a lot of vision from Simon and the team. But yeah, those panels were something that I think were a real success, and kind of sum up that approach to working internationally and working with local artisans. We do that everywhere that we go. Not everyone has got a story like that. Every country has a story like that where we stop cars at the side of the road. But yeah, it's discovering those artisans because they're there, and it's also understanding their skills. So Thailand, it was the weaving, the rattan, but we've worked in South Africa, Argentina, where their kind of woodworking skills second to none. That to celebrate that, like bring that into the design and make sure that becomes the star of the show. Don't go putting metal in, for example, because it won't achieve the same heights as what they could achieve with timber. So yeah, there's always knowing your market, knowing the skills, speaking to people locally. That's a key thing. Just talk to people.
And the connectivity to environment, location in the project, I think, is an important factor.
Definitely.
As well.
Yeah, that sense of place. Designing hotels and things like that, it's key. You don't want people to turn up, arrive somewhere that, they've traveled hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, and you don't want them to get there and be like, oh, it's the same as where I've just come from. It's
right.
you want that personality. You want it to have that kind of spirit of the place that they're at. And so it's key to have those things in.
We call it here in the States, experiential environments, that you experience something both in all aspects of the senses, visual, touch, smell, everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important.
So how does a studio keep motivated and inspired, especially after the lead creative passed? How do you invigorate yourselves and keep his vision and his passion alive in your projects in the process?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I guess it's that pressure that I was talking about, the thinking like, how would he respond? That's always there at the back of my mind. Yeah, I think the most challenging projects that we've ever done would be the first ones where David had died, and trying to set out to the world, who are we now? And standing on our own 2 feet and saying to the world, this is us. When I think there've been challenging briefs in the time, and things that have arisen throughout a project, but nothing will put the pressure on quite like that ever again. I don't think. It was a real moment, and I'm biased, but I think that we responded very well. But there are moments where, even to this day, and the Fontainebleau Las Vegas. So that's a project that we've recently just opened. Incredible place where it's got this whole backstory to it, where we started the project 15 years ago when David was alive. And so it then, I'm not going to tell the whole history of that, but it's taken a long time to come to fruition. And for anyone who knows Vegas well, the tower that's been standing there waiting to open,
empty, and yes,
yeah, it's finally it's there, and it's magnificent. But the key thing here is that we did those initial designs back in 2008 when David was alive, and we picked them back up. That was something that the client asked, is that they wanted us to return to those exact designs. And of course, we needed to contemporize them and kind of respecify materials that, funnily enough, have been discontinued. But looking at those drawings, you could see David's personality in them. And there was a real magical moment where you look at them and you think, okay, well, we need to contemporize them, but also this is our heritage and our DNA, like no other opportunity that we'll ever get. And so, yeah, the Collins bar, ironically named, not named after him, but yeah, that is a great example of seeing his influence and his touch on projects even still to today. And so we never lose sight of it. And, we've got a big picture of him as you leave the presentation room, so that when you finish the presentation, you kind of give him a knowing look and think, what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pure sign. Yeah. Now, some of the projects that you've worked on during your tenure, almost 13 years within the studio?
It's flown by.
What has really resonated with you and that you'd like to repeat again?
You know what? I think one of the beautiful things about working at DCS is that you always get new things. And I guess that's the thing that I want to repeat is the new challenges every time. Mm-hmm. And, this year it's maritime. No idea what it'll be next year. But each project is new. And we do this intentionally. We get design teams not to get pigeonholed. We move them around within sectors and different locations so that we don't just keep regurgitating the same designs, that it always stays, with those fresh pair of eyes. And so, we never know what's going to be coming up next, but we always know that it'll be something new and it'll be something different and never really a repeat. And that's a great thing about this studio.
Now, in your studio, I think it's formatted in such that you have principals from various sectors working on a single project. How does that collaboration work internally during that conceptualization process?
Yeah, and each one of those directors has their own kind of style and approach to working. And you learn so much when you do switch and you get to work with them and understand their take on design. And each one of them again has those same set of core values that the whole studio has, that do the best design that you can, that is unique to that client, that is something that is only relevant to them. And how you get there is a different story. And I'm trying to think of examples, but I've recently worked with the residential director, Siobhan, she's great, absolutely brilliant to work with, really meticulous, methodical, and will really push you to get the best out of you. And the way that she deals with situations was amazing to watch, and to just sit in meetings with her, and her composure is incredible, second to none. That you could be sat there and the client could be saying, we want to change everything, and she would just take it all in her stride. And for someone like me, it takes a long time to get to that point where you can take you don't react to things, you respond to them. It's taken a long time.
It doesn't rattle your nerves.
Exactly.
It's like I'm starting over.
Actually, we've had that many times. And it's where things have changed last minute. How you deal with it is a real measure of who you are as a designer. And it's always a case of knowing that when someone is changing it, particularly, normally it is the client when it comes to that kind of extreme change, that what is the message that they're trying to say? It's not always, so straightforward, but always know that they are asking for that change because it will suit their, that long-term vision, that goal. It will improve it. It will create a better space. So no matter how big the change is, no matter how kind of dramatic it seems, it's always just take that moment to think, this will make it better, and we're going to work with them.
The world of design is so vast and constantly changing with technology and stuff, and Pinterest and all other types of mediums out there, kind of giving you a inspiration, so to speak. Where do you find inspiration for new projects, and how do you keep your designs fresh and innovative? And how does the studio kind of support that?
Yeah, well, personally, I like to try and look outside of the interior design field. Coming to my mind now, Via Eugenie, who they create shows for fashion brands. They are fantastic and a completely different mindset to design. Something that's temporary, that isn't going to last that long physically, but it's something that you experience and will stay in your mind forever. And so you can kind of take those principles and bring it back to you. And so I guess that's the point, is that design inspiration is everywhere. And especially when you work in a studio we've got 60 people in our studio. And so that's 60 people with all of their own different sources and different inspirations coming together. But I think in terms of the technology, that Pinterest, Instagram, all of these places are great for references, but nothing will quite compete with books. So, as ironic as that is, going back to these book references, and the reason for that is because that things that you see by designers that are published in books, they've stood that test of time, and they still look that good today. And what's great about them is that you'll often find that those designers from those eras they had more time, or so it seems. They had more time to develop their designs and to kind of kindly write down their approach to design, so that you can then sit there and you can read it. And it's not always a case of seeing what they've done and thinking, okay, well, we never just imitate what they do. We study their approach to design and think, okay, well, that's still relevant to today. And in fact, probably just out of shot, there's a book of Maurice Lapidus, who was the architect who did the original Fontainebleau in Miami. And so when we were working on that project, looking at his approach to design was incredible. So forward thinking. And for when you design hotels, the amount of times that people say, it's a home away from home, he was the one guy who's saying, no, actually, this is a special moment for you. Like, you traveled all the way around the world, and it may be for a special occasion. It may be your honeymoon, for example. You don't want it to be your home. You want it to be a celebration. And he was talking about putting people on a stage, making them feel that they're that special, that they are center stage. And at the moment that you start reading that, your mind's going off in completely different directions to where you originally would have been. And then you pair that up with the kind of technologies that there are available today to take that philosophy, the timelessness, and then how does it translate into a contemporary form that we can put into our designs.
Are there any dream projects or challenges you're eager to tackle within the realm of design?
Oh, dream. You know what? I'm really fortunate to have worked on some incredible projects that I think if you to have asked me what is my dream project, I've already worked on it, which I don't know what that says for the rest of my career, but but no, I think projects that I would like to do, wellness one would be great. And I guess as I get older and wiser, I kind of think I want to give more back to society, and I would love to design a hospital or something that's involved with healthcare and caring for people. That would be really wholesome to take that. I don't think that there would be the kind of the budgets involved that it's true. And that's a shame. It's a shame. You kind of think it's probably the one time that you should not have any, like, cost shouldn't be a consideration when it comes to your health and getting better and recovering. It would be lovely to do something like that create a space where people can then come back to being the best person that they are.
What was the very first project you worked on 13 years ago with DCS? And what's the last one that you just are in process of or just completed?
Well, the first one was a hotel project that unfortunately didn't see its way through to completion. We did a show apartment because it was half hotel, half residences. We did a show apartment in London, and it was really, that was a moment. I remember walking into the office that day and very much, like I said, I had worked with David Collins' studio previously from the other side of the fence, and I'd worked with a guy called Sean, and when I turned up on my first day, I was asking, "Oh, where's Sean?" And they're like, "This is his seat. This is where you'll be sitting." I was like, "Are you joking?" I didn't know. He'd never said that he was leaving. But yeah, turned out I was his replacement, and I had imposter syndrome from day one of walking in. It's crazy though. It was this company that was at the top of their game, and you walk in, you see every single designer, and you like when you first walk in there, you think they are all the best in the field, and now it's, what am I doing here? You question yourself, but it's, that confidence grows, and very quickly you realize that, that why you were so intimidated is just it's not relevant. The people who were there were amazing. They really sort of take you under their wing and show you all of the kind of the tricks of the trade. And very quickly you kind of grow in confidence, believe in yourself,
right.
And that's when you start to get to the point where you're like, okay, and you know what? Actually, I think that only now I'm really achieving the point where I think I'm ready to go and deliver my very best.
Right.
And I think that's really exciting that, the upcoming project, I don't know what I've been doing for the past 13 years, but but I kind of think that, the next few years will be the most exciting. And the most recent project was the Fontainebleau Las Vegas. Amazing space where just the lobby. So we designed the lobby, the bar. I say the bar, there's like 38 F&B spaces or something in there. We designed the Collins bar and Don's Prime, and also Fleur de Lis suites that are up, which are the kind of high roller suites. Lovely, lovely places to be, great views. But for me, one of the most magical spaces is the lobby, and it was that moment. It's the first space that guests get to see and interact with, and it is on a scale like I've never seen before. And it's this huge dome, elliptical dome as well, just to make it even more complicated to draw, to visualize, to understand, to plan in your head and make sure that nothing's clashing. And the team, right. I've got to give a shout out. The team did an incredible job. And by the team, I mean the whole design team, the client team, making that become a reality. But the key thing in that space and the brief from Simon was to design this room that's on this scale like we've never seen, that in all good minds should have structural columns, but he wanted those columns to be glass. And you think, a glass
that's
column.
A task.
Yeah, exactly. Glass columns, okay. And they for me are the kind of star of the show in that room, a real feat of engineering. And we worked with Lasfit, incredible company to work with in glass. I think that they're probably the only people in the world who could achieve it, especially to that level of detail, and execute our vision. Just the lighting inside of those glass columns, they look like otherworldly, and they're great. They're great to see and great to be around. And I love those moments where you get these kind of far-fetched ideas from your design directors who are right. Yeah. There's been some good ones over the years as well.
So what's next for David Collins Studio?
Well, 40-year anniversary. So yeah, like I said, watch this space. There's things that will be coming up that I'm not even privy to yet, but I know you hear the buzz and the energy in the office and people getting excited for it. So yeah, keep
something's going on.
Exactly. But I think in the immediate future, the Queen Anne, the cruise ship, just only a matter of weeks away, will be a real big moment for us as a studio, where you get to see us, like I said, taking on a project with fresh eyes and
right,
hopefully bringing something new to the cruise industry, and celebrating this incredible brand that is Cunard, their heritage. It's an amazing story, and so and it's ginormous. There's a lot to kind of unpack and to discover when you see the design of that. So yeah, hopefully there'll be lots of stories to tell. And also we've got an amazing project with Harrods, who excellent client for us. They have really embraced our design, and we've worked with them on amazing projects like the food halls, which are some of my personal favorites, designed by Marco and his team, and obviously the rest of the people at the office, but they did an incredible job there. But coming up is, I hope I'm not breaking any NDAs with this, but the tea rooms. No, I'm pretty sure it's in the public domain. So the tea rooms, which I guess is probably the most stereotypical British project that you could get, which is Harrods and tea together. So yeah, it should be a good one.
How more British can you get than that?
Exactly. I've got my cup of tea here waiting. I can just see it out the corner of my eye.
For someone that's just starting their career in interior design or design in general, be it architecture or such, what advice would you give for navigating the industry and finding their own path?
My advice would be listen, would be the first one. I'm probably saying this as if like, what advice would I give myself? Because I guess that's my experience. I'm terrible at listening. When people talk to me, I have this thing where my mind is just going, running riot in different directions with different design ideas, playing them out until the end and realizing that actually that's not a good idea. And then you come back and rejoin the conversation and you think, oh no, I've just missed some key information and I've been gone for 10, 15 seconds. It's a blessing and a curse. But no, I'd say listen. And then probably most important of all is that kind of, where I was talking about Siobhan and her composure, the ability to take criticism. It's a real skill. It's something that I think is overlooked in design, that you're always going to face criticism, people's opinions. It is a subjective basis. Projects, in the public domain where everyone can comment on them, and everyone will have that opinion. Doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's their opinion. And I would say that get to the point where you finish a project and you think, I have done the best according to my values and my design principles. And then any other criticism, especially negative, is something that you can then just sort of see for what it is, learn from it if it is something that you think that you should learn from. But you'll still sleep well at night because you think, I did the best that I could. And yeah, I guess knowing those values and principles is key as well to that part.
And design is part of an art form, so everyone has their own interpretation. So you have to be open to critique and another person's perspective of what they see.
All the time, even when you're at home. Yeah. I mean, technology, we were talking about technology. Blessings of technology is that you can work remotely, but then that also means that you could be at home and your partner, your children, or whoever it is walks by your screen, looks at it.
What are you doing? Yeah. Oh, I got some ideas for you. No, it's okay.
Funnily enough, sometimes they come out with some golden ones, but there's been funny moments where people look at your screen and you're like, why have you done that? Like I said, the clown face. There are some others that, funny stories. But you don't see it. You can't see the wood for the trees, but they can.
Well, Joseph, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience about David Cullen Studio?
Well, I guess if you don't know us, come and check us out. We've got amazing projects. I'd imagine that a lot of listeners are US based. Most recently, we've just opened a project with Chef Evan Funk in Chicago. So anyone who's in Chicago, go check that out. It's called Tradita. Beautiful project where celebrating, Tuscan food and architecture. And from what I've seen, I've never seen it in person, but looking at the photos, and just understanding the plans and having looked at that, you walk into this space where it's quite intimate, and and all of a sudden it explodes into this huge volume of a restaurant and bar, and some great design features in there. And yeah, that's such an exciting project. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. And I've got to give a shout out to the architect on that, who is Studio Gang. I believe it's the biggest tower in the world by a female architect.
So, oh, really?
Yeah, which is incredible feat. So yeah, recognize that. So yeah, go check out the building as well. Lovely building. So yeah, I mean, all that's left to say is thank you so much for having me, and apologies for the kind of therapy session when I was revisiting David's death. I've not done that before with anyone.
Well, it means he left a lasting impression, not just you, but a lot of people within the design community and in the world globally, his projects, his clients, and else. So
yeah, his legacy will continue, and we've got the honor of trying to keep up with that, and also the pressure, I guess, of having his name attached to the projects. But hopefully,
you might get smacked in the back of the head when you not know it. Like, what happened?
Hopefully, we do, and just service. So,
well, I think you guys do, and continue success to you and to the studio for many 40 years to come. So
amazing, Craig. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, and best to you. And we will chat soon, Joseph.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. See you soon.
Mm-hmm.